I wanna wake. I wanna know just what to do and what to say. I want a reason. I wanna know why. Can there never be heaven right here on earth and peace inside? There's a danger in forever looking outside. You start to believe that all your prayers have been denied, and you forget the sound of your own name. Thus begins the suffering and pain. Still there's a promise in the journeys of the mind. You begin to believe that there are miracles you will find, and that someday you'll remember who you are. The seed within a bright and shining star. I want an answer. I wanna wake. I wanna know just what to do and what to say. I want a reason. I wanna know why. Can there never be heaven right here on earth and peace inside? Inside my heart, deep in your soul, within each part and in the whole. There's a flame that lives within a hungering heart, that only awaits a gift of love for it to spark into a fire that burns forever endlessly, like the river that can't help but meet the sea. In this magic hour between the dark and the dawn, in the space between the silence and the song, suddenly the mystery is clear, that love is only letting go of fear. Love is the answer. Love is the way. Love is in knowing just what to do and what to say. Love is the reason. Love is the why. Love is in heaven right here on earth and peace inside. Love is the reason. Love is the why. Love is in heaven right here on earth and peace inside.
That song is called The Wandering Soul. It's the last song that John Denver wrote. He never recorded it. That's Luann Hunt who did. So we come together from our different corners of the city and different places on the planet. Hello to those of you that are joining us on the internet. And it would appear you can hear very clearly because I finally called a company that sells recording devices, and they told me exactly what to get. It only took 6 months of trying on my own. There's something about taking directions. So, anyway, looks like that's the outgoing feed is great. So we come together to do this ancient practice, stopping, sitting down, fasting from our various activities, there's a danger in forever looking outside. We start to believe that our prayers have been denied. So we stop, at least for a moment, looking outside and start looking inside. Fortunately, we have the extraordinary and elegant teachings of the Buddha, a map, strategies of consciousness. Go to a quiet place, sit down comfortably upright. Practice mindfulness, heart mindfulness. Practice what I like to call affectionate attention. And it's affectionate because our intention is to accept the experience exactly as it is, with neither clinging to it nor rejecting it. Which means that for the moment, all the war can stop, all the struggle can stop. So this miracle of awareness and awakeness this capacity to know that we know, that is part of the human gift. We can bring to mindfulness of in-breathing and out-breathing. And it's not an imagination. It's also not a controlled breathing. It's not pranayama or any of the many sometimes useful ways that we have learned to control the breath. This practice is all about relinquishing control. In the practice of science, we set up the experiment and then we carry it out. And we try not to be attached to any particular outcome, which allows us to be objective, relatively objective. It's a bit of a problem when our funding depends upon particular outcomes, but that's different here in meditation. We can actually practice true observation. There are sensations in the chest and abdomen and at the nostrils with breathing in and breathing out. These can provide a marvelous anchor. no matter what storm is happening interiorly or exteriorly, it is possible to remember frequently to come home to the breath. This homing practice then develops concentration, as well as somehow potentiating mindfulness. This then allows the thoughts, feelings, emotions, impulses, patterns of behavior to become visible. As these patterns become visible, we begin to be able to shape our destiny. Because we don't have to act upon every impulse. We don't believe every thought. Each of our bodies is a piece of the living earth. We are the earth come to life as humans. We require feeding and liquids and provide waste for the world as carbon dioxide and our various digestive products. We also convert the food into consciousness, which fuels the body to be a repository, a vehicle for consciousness. It is this consciousness into which we take refuge. With it, we can notice that the breath and the thoughts and the moods share a radical, utter, complete, irrefutable impermanence. So we can study and be present with the very first beginning of a breath and watch how it's born. How does it come out of no thingness into thingness? And just as each breath has a beginning and a rise to fullness, it has a decline and then a vanishing. How present can you be? Similarly, noticing how thoughts think themselves into being and then self-liberate, they vanish. we start meditation with a study of the breath and body sensations. The 5 hindrances: sense, desire, aversion, restlessness, sloth and torpor, and doubt. From that basis in sanity and stability, we can come to be present with every daily life activity. When we stop looking outside, there's no telling what we will find. We might find ancient tears, or any affect, anger, loneliness, bliss, it's all part of us. Let's have a little popularity competition for the 5 hindrances. Who experienced wanting something, the mind wanting something in this sitting? Ooh. The lust factor. Who experienced the mind striking against not wanting something? How about restlessness, agitation, and worry? How about sloth and torpor? That was a yes. How about doubt? Doubt. How about sadness? Sad. Happy. Bliss or delight. Free-floating anxiety. There's a book, I don't know whether it's still in print, by Wes Nisker. It's evolutionary biology meets the Dharma, basically. And in a very humorous way, he said that many things, but being since we're as vulnerable as we are, we have no armor. And these little weak arms and so on, and we were prey for the longest time. Any human being who isn't subject to anxiety and some high blood pressure is in denial. Because, snap. Honey, the kids are gone. Oh well. Equanimity, you know. Come and go, it's all impermanent. So, Mr. Dalton, would you be so kind as to guide the movement?
Sir.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, you didn't unhook.
You want everything. Jeez.
I don't want to rip your ear off. So, again, we get in touch with our feet and our capacity to rock forward and backward. We set the intention to move the weight a little bit forward, and the body responds with maybe lifting the heels a little bit, lifting the toes. We can shift the weight to the right or to the left and watch what happens, the sensations in the bottoms of the feet. Sink into the knees, rise up. Gather more energy with a deeper breath and a full exhale as we sink. Rising up and breathing in and sinking down. This time we'll let the arms rise with our inhale and sink with our exhale. And just like the breath, the rise arises out of nothing, disappears, and then the descent begins. And it disappears. Opening up, falling down. So there's a certain sense of power and capacity in lifting, but we'll lift and then open to the side And notice if the mood changes when we expand the lungs and expand the rib cage. And once more. And then this phase of the practice comes to a close. We rise up overhead and start another pattern, painting a rainbow. We arc over to one side and back to the other. The lifting has to fade into descending. And there's a little seam between the end of the arc and the beginning of the new one. And then this phase ends, we reach up, separate the hands, and sink deeper into the knees, cross the wrists. There's a rising up, turning, and then an opening. A breath in, and a breath out. Nourishment from the earth, and a gift to the trees and the growing things. Turning the hips, opening the arms, pushing and pulling. Body feels more fluid. That may instigate a certain mood. Drawing the arms back, we come up overhead, and then there's a pause and a sinking. Opening up, falling down. Lifting one arm across, one leg takes more weight. Returning, the weight shifts. The rising up must end for the falling to unfold. Turning, gazing at the moon, there's a twist to the spine, then kind of a release down to the center. Twist. Then pressing across, the weight continues to shift. We reach up with one arm, focus on the palm, press the other palm towards the earth, and draw the hands across, and switch. Where does the support come from for this extended arm? We pretend it's a cloud drifting across the sky, but that image creates a whole sense of support from the bottoms of the feet to the tips of the finger. Okay, then we can play a little bit more with the shifting of the weight. Step a little half step and splash in the sea. Riding the waves, feeling the shoulders open up to the front and pull back. Opening the arms to the side, we'll gather some energy and draw it in. And turning to the other side, half a step, splash in the sea. Riding the waves. Opening the arms. And now we come back to the center. Feel that still balance. Make a fist and sink. Let one arm rise. Imagining a dragon rising from the sea. Power in the legs. Center of gravity stays balanced and centered. But there's all sorts of other sensations. We rise up on the toes and soar with the cranes. Maybe open the stance a bit and turn the wheel. Change direction. And then back to our center point, feeling that balance, everything symmetrical, even across the soles of the feet. We lift one arm and one leg, and make one leg work, then make the other one work. Hopefully the brain is sending signals right and left to keep the movement going. And coming to rest again, breathe in and release. And then taking our centered position and sinking into the knees a little more, pulling the shoulder back a little bit more. Full breath in. Check the tailbone, see if it's pointing downward towards the earth. Can we feel the spine a little straighter, lower down, the sway back that we often carry? Can we open the space between the vertebrae, tilting the pelvis just a little bit? So where does the support come from for this position? We're riding the breath. So in a sense, the oxygen is supporting this position. The oxygen is produced by the plants. So it's the earth that's really supporting this position. Can we just let go into that support? And then opening the arms to the side, we'll lift up a little bit and come down the center. And thank you for your attention.
Am I hooked in? Am I on? Good morning, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kate, and I'm in charge of service announcements and taking care of business and loving anybody I can get my hands on. How many of you are here for the first time today? Okay, so one of the things that we haven't done this morning is to tell you what happens here. From 9 to 10, we have private meditation time. From 10 to 11, or 10 to 10:40 actually, we have the shared community meditation time. Then we have, as often as we can get Master Jim to lead us in Qigong, we do that for about 20 minutes. And then we have a Dharma talk. Today happens to be Potluck Sunday, And we invite all of you to join us. Whether or not you were able to fix something, we always manage to have enough food. During the silent shared meditation and during the Dharma talk, we do ask that we minimize interruptions as much as possible. That means if you have kids, if you can get them settled before we start the silent meditation. If you have, of course, check your phones. If you need to use the restroom, if you could do that before the Dharma talk starts, that would be wonderful, to really demonstrate our respect for the teachings and Robert and each other, so that we can all sit quietly and listen together. Obviously, if you need to leave for some reason, please do that. It's not draconian here, but do what you can to be thoughtful of others. We have so much going on here right now, it's just incredible. Coming up this week, the 1-year Deepening Your Practice group starts. If you haven't signed up yet, please do. All of our activities are on the website, including there is a self-compassion 1-day retreat that Doug Poland is doing, the 31st. In February, Robert will be doing a Remembering Death 1-day retreat. This year's curriculum includes a lot of 1-day retreats. We heard the community ask for it, and so we think that's a really good thing. Jim, are you going to be doing Qigong again in February? The 14th, okay. Okay. If you want to know all about us, you can certainly check on the website. We're at portlandinsight.org. Our webmaster seems to be finding out things to do for us before I know about them. Thank you. Things are just appearing. It's wonderful. If you'd like to be included in a conversation between each other, please sign up to be on the PIMC forum. That's a Yahoo group. And sometimes it's chatty. It's often a sweet place to share things. We also have an email contact list for official notices and our communications to you about the curriculum and the things that are coming up. So you'll want to be sure and sign up for that. The list is at the back of the room. It's on a clipboard. The paper is blue. If some of you signed up for it last week and it didn't happen, I apologize. I was sick for part of the week, and it's one of the things that I didn't get to, but I will definitely get to it this week. Along with, we're working on our budget and all the things that we need to do. Along those lines, the ever unfortunate sewer issue is still an issue. We now have 3 bids, and those will be going to the board, I think, this coming week. Adam, thank you for helping with that. And we still have matching funds available. And so if you have not found it in your heart yet to contribute to the sanitation of the building, your funds will still be matched. And I thank you very much if you can do that. And you can do that online. I also would like to invite any of you who are ready to do so to become part of the ongoing sustaining funding for PIMC in the care of this building and the Dharma by joining the Stewardship Circle, which is a monthly giving plan. And it has made an enormous difference in the last couple of months. This community is growing so fast. The need is so great to find. I looked around this morning. Sometimes I get truly mushy. I look around and I see 100 of you who are doing their very best to be the best people they can be. And that's amazing. I mean, that's just truly amazing. And we want to do that for everyone who can come. So, if you're not ready for that, there is the Donna Bowl at the back of the room, and we appreciate anything that you might find it in your heart to give today. It will increase the size of your heart and our ability to help others. We are still collecting clothes and toiletries for those in need. The winter is not over. If you have not yet done so, it's a good time to do some spring cleaning and bring us what you can. Michael Mitchell is taking care of that for us. Have I forgotten anything? Can anybody think of? Oh, our volunteer coordinator, Ethan, our new volunteer coordinator is out of town on family matters and will be back in a couple weeks to pick up the reins. And in the meantime, if you have questions about volunteer activities, I'm your girl. Yes. It's really important to know. We do have a suggested cost for all of our classes. We do have scholarships available. No one has ever turned away. And so far, we've managed to keep doing that. With so many coming, it's, as you can imagine, there's a cost to it. And so when you put money in that Donna Bowl or when you join the Stewardship Circle, a good part of what you're doing is supporting, making it possible for others to get deeper into the Dharma. Yes, Had.
I'd like to announce that we have a library in the next talking about a library. We have over 4,000 items now available for taking out for a month-long period. So please visit the library, or if you have any books that you are now done with and you'd like to pass on, we can make a promise to keep them in good shape for the next 500 years. Barring any earthquakes. We're okay.
Okay, so stay tuned. There's always new stuff on the website. And if you want to see Robert, he does half-hour free Dharma consultations. Call me. My contact information is on the website. And yes, Paul?
Do you want to announce the winter work party yet, or are we still?
Yes, we do. What was the date? The 15th. So that will be a mini karma yoga party where we're going to just do some work around here, and I will announce that officially next week in the digest, but we will be doing a work party after the Dharma talk on Sunday the 15th. Thank you. Movie night again next month. Potluck today, come and eat, join us. It looks good. I made baked potatoes. I'm done.
The sound of someone else's baby. It's so sweet. That's a sweet baby too. It took years for my blood pressure to stop. You know, when a child screams in a restaurant, it's like, oh, someone's baby is crying. It's no longer. From Kabir, we have this. There is nothing but water in the holy pools. I know. I've been swimming in them. All the gods, sculpted of wood or ivory, can't say a word. I know. I've been crying out to them. The sacred books of the East are nothing but words. I looked through their covers one day sideways. What Kabir talks of is only what he has lived through. If you have not lived through something, it is not true. trusting our own experience. What I'm going to speak about today, and the way I'm going to speak of it, is I think really the first time ever in the personal way that I'm going to speak of it. There was a time when I gave lots of talks on Robert Lifton and thought control groups, and commonly called cults. You'll hear in the story, which I'll have to keep brief, how I was aided tremendously by a fellow who was doing at that what he called exit counseling, for helping people get out of controlling groups. And I've shared these 8 points, and I used to have chapter 22 of Robert Lifton's Ideological Totalism, Thought Reform, and the Psychology of Totalism by Robert Lifton. I used to have that in my drawer, and when people would come in and they were struggling to leave groups or had left groups and they weren't feeling very good, I'd give them that chapter and their eyes would fly open. It's like, whoa, someone's thought about this. It's with a little trepidation that I'm going to open the door on my experience with this. In 1971, I was in India, and I discovered myself on a meditation retreat with a man named Goenka, who then he's gone on to found around the world. There's many centers and 10-day retreats in that tradition. Changed my life. I encountered the Dharma, and it made so much sense. It was like coming home. And I've heard from many people here that they walk in the door and they encounter the teachings here, and it's like, oh right, this is what I've been trying to do all my life. And it turns out that there's a model, there's community to support it. So it changed my life. I lived in Europe for several years, and I was going back after India to York University to do a master's in environmental studies. And did that. My plan was to become a foreign aid worker, to do water systems in rural villages was my fantasy. But I discovered that with the Dharma and with what I saw happening in the classroom and in myself, I saw that there was plenty of greed, hatred, and delusion to work with. And my task became to go inwards. And that's when I started in my first psychotherapy group. And so then my life's work has been the weaving together of psychotherapy, Western and Eastern paths to wholeness. So there I was in Toronto, sitting at least an hour a day, sometimes 2, with no support. I missed a piece, very important piece. After the 10-day retreat, my girlfriend and I went to Sri Lanka, and we visited the Buddhist Publication Society, BPS. Lovely Mr. Richard Abhayasekara took care of us. She felt quite ill there. Anyway, he told us about this old monk, this lovely old monk in the woods that we should go visit. And so we did, took a cab until we couldn't drive anymore, and then we walked. And there was this old fellow named Nyanaponikatera, who, I get a little teary, who was a German man, a close friend of Carl Jung, who had been a monk for a long time, practiced in Burma, and then he went to Sri Lanka. And he asked me to tell him about the Dharma, so I did. When I look back at it, it's like why I opened my mouth at all and didn't just say, talk to me. But he gave us tea and biscuits. And on his desk was this little booklet, or one like it. It's called Beginning to See. And beginning to see the shorter discourses. And in it, there are these little epigrams, little drawings with words. And they're pretty impressive. Things like, we live our lives fearfully to such an extent that we live dishonestly. The mind is the only means we have of getting out of this mess. Careful with it. Immorality, selfishness, anger, and chemicals dull this single key. In what direction are you taking you? Is it worth your effort? Is it exactly where you want to go? Have you ever considered cessation? Not suicide, cessation. Something very constructive. Detached does not mean dead. Rather, it is made of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. And so on. They're very beautiful little epigrams. Attachment is our greatest self-cruelty. So I brought this home with me. And there I was in Toronto trying to meditating. There was a problem with my practice, however, because I was meditating a bunch and smoking marijuana and drinking a bunch. Oddly enough, the brake and the accelerator were complicated together. I couldn't figure out why I couldn't get concentrated. Are you content with where you are right now? Because right nows are all that you have. So, at a certain point, I looked at the address and it said, oh, Colorado. And then I contacted them, and I wound up, to make a long story short, I wound up going to do a 2-month intensive retreat. 16 hours a day of practice, alone, basically. And of course, that changed my life. And the fellow's name was Sujata. He's been deceased about 20 years now. He was very charismatic, played the guitar, sang, and he spoke of the Dharma. He'd been a monk for a while in Sri Lanka. The story I heard later from one of his colleagues was that his teacher said, don't go home now, you're not ready. But he was ready for himself. And what I later realized also was that he had a very severe case of narcissistic personality disorder. And I was very vulnerable from my own narcissistic wound, my own looking for someone to validate me and someone to love me so that gaping hole from early abandonment and just being a human, that someone could fill that. So I was very drawn to him. So drawn to him that I went back. Well, how much of this? I went back to the university. I finished my degree, though he encouraged me, don't bother finishing the degree because that's just worldly knowledge. But something in me required that I do so. So I did that, and then I went back. And I devoted the next 4 years to helping him with his work, his very important work of spreading the Dharma. And I now look upon him with a lot of love and gratitude because he gave me a lot. He taught me how to play again, actually. I had lived in Europe for several years, and so we hatched this plan that I would go back to Europe, and I spent several months there, difficult months. And I created a lecture tour for him in Paris, London, Berlin, Milano, Geneva, at CERN, the European Nuclear Research Center, where the psych thing is, Milano. Anyway, there were 10 different places. And I enlisted all my friends to come see him. And he was pretty charismatic. And in fact, we together created a month-long retreat at a place called the Château de Plage, which is in central northern France. And 25 people came and spent a month. And miracles of healing happened. It was quite something. And there was something always a little bit to a lot off-center. And in the end, what happened was he offended every single one of my friends in some way or another because he had a psychic gift. He could sit in a room of 25 people and go around the room and tell everybody something about their vulnerability and hurt them a little bit. And if they were street savvy, they would say, "This guy is dangerous, I'm out of here." But if they were seekers of truth, they said, "He's enlightened because he knows all about me." So it was a very mixed bag. The retreat, as I said, miracles of healing occurred at the retreat, and some real hurting of people occurred at the retreat. I then went back and spent 4 years, 3 years I guess after that, running with him month-long retreats. And a lot of people came, and actually several of the big-name people in American Dharma, that was their first encounter with the Dharma. One piece of the teachings that was off-kilter was an excessive emphasis on concentration. Those intensive 16 hours a day of an hour of sitting, an hour of walking, or 2 hours of sitting, or 2 hours of walking, with the intention to sort of violently, in a way, suppress thought so as to create high concentration states. And it worked pretty well, in a way, to do that. That doesn't necessarily lead to wisdom, however. There was doubt in here, but I couldn't really think about it. It was a thought control group. I'm going to talk about these criteria. And to doubt him, well, one saw, if one doubted him and questioned him, one was expelled. And to be expelled meant that you were gone. And since it became one's world, that all one's friends, he strongly encouraged, don't bother communicating with your family and your old friends, because this is the path. This is the Dharma. This is the Buddhist teaching. And in fact, the Buddhist teachings had come into my heart and mind and transformed my life, and they were clearly the path. So humanity, it was like twisted just a little bit. There was a time there were particular circumstances where we were at the beach, just the two of us, and he fell into great sadness and leaned into my arms and sobbed about how badly he felt that he started the meditation center with the $78,000 that he convinced one of his students to give him when the student's father died, and that was the insurance payment. That he felt very bad about having stolen this money, essentially. And that was quite an amazing turnaround. I was like, oh, he's vulnerable and I can be helpful. And I thought, oh, things have really changed now. And the next day, I was acting as though things had changed, and he said, come with me. And we went up to his bedroom, and he sat on the bed, and I sat on the floor, and he proceeded to tell me what my place was. That I was the student and he was the teacher. And I felt I went from feeling whole, more whole, into feeling fragmented again and inadequate. But I almost saw it. I did see it, but I couldn't hold it. In the end, I left, but it was very messy. I went to see another teacher in San Francisco, Rina Sirkar, famous Burmese woman, and in order to have her invite him to come teach there. And I got him. I also set up a speaking engagement for him at Stanford, going around selling the Dharma. I was so enamored of the Dharma, kind of glowing with it, and I could then get his foot in the door. Anyway, I stayed for an overnight meditation, at which time I met my first wife. And we had a falling in love thing. It was wonderful. And then I went back, over several weekends, I went back to him and said, I'd like to go visit her in Oregon. And he said, you have to choose. You can go, or you can stay. And I was riven, I was just torn. And I pleaded with him to let me stay and do a month of meditation in order to make up my mind. Well, what I did was, every thought of her I pushed down. And she became an idea. And I wrote her a horrid letter at the end of that. Perhaps someday our time we'll get together and it will be cosmic. And of course it broke her heart. But again, the doubt was visible, it was tangible to me. That's sad. Then, 6 months later, a man, a teacher, very famous teacher, named Munindra, who was Joseph Goldstein's teacher as well, came to visit. They had heard about the moral and ethical problems that were happening in Western centers, and in particular that were happening there. And he walked in the door, and within 20 minutes I was sobbing with my head in his lap. And what happened was I realized that I could leave Sujata, the fellow's name, I could leave him and not lose the Dharma. That there wasn't Dharma like we have it all over all these centers around the States. It was really a very bleak time for that. It was very early. And so I did stay another month and did a month-long retreat with Munindraji, which was very different. And then during that time, I called up the person who was to become the mother of my children, and we connected, and the rest is history. So I left there to go be here. She encouraged me to get into therapy right away. I don't know why. Several things I want to say, but I'll do it in the context of the points. About 6 months or 8 months, maybe longer, might have been a year and a half, after I left, she had a friend who came to town and who was very involved in exit counseling and deprogramming, so to speak. And we had lunch together at Ezekiel's Wheel in the Northwest. You remember that? And we talked from noon till 11 o'clock at night. And it was one of the most incredible conversations of my life, because I got free. Because he knew how to speak with me about the ways that my mind was contracted around these ideas, and was afraid to think of certain things. And He gave me my first view of chapter 22, Robert Lifton's work. Pretty emotional topic for me. I just want to reach out and pick up one little piece here. There's a young woman who is going to prison for 6 years or something here in the United States because she made herself available to be a bride to someone in ISIS. And she's been convicted of assisting the enemy, basically. She was in a thought control circumstance, and as are all those unfortunate, tragic, mostly young men in ISIS. ISIS has nothing to do with Islam. It's the perverted ideas of a particular tiny little slice that is not Islam. And as I think I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, we really all ought to never say Islamic radicals. We ought to say religious cultists, people who are part of a religion-based, I'm losing it now. I have such strong feelings about this. That these young men have grown up in madrasas, they've grown up in circumstances where what they are doing is purifying the world, their purpose, and they believe it, that they are bringing purity to the world. They're going to rid the world of evil. Some of the things that I did, blessedly, there was nothing horrid like that or irreparable. But some of the lying that I did to get Sujata into Stanford, for instance, and some of the ways we treated people were just the same. They weren't on the grand scale. We weren't killing people. But it was because I believed that the Dharma was, of course, the very best. And the Theravadan teaching was the only one, really. There was a lot of paying lip service to other traditions. I have come so far in the fact that we have over on that wall, we have the door, that's the direction to Mecca. And that symbol back there to the left of the Buddha says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. All Islamic prayers begin with it, and it means we begin in the name of Allah, who is compassion and mercy. That what I teach, my primary vocabulary is the Buddha Dharma, but I would say that I'm also a Buddhist, and there's Catholic roots and there's the Sufi roots, and because all of these traditions, the great traditions, are all pointing at the same experience, and they're all based in love and kindness, and they get perverted, of course. So anyway, this young woman is being treated as a criminal rather than as a person with a thought disorder, a cult phenomenon. These are kind of revolutionary ideas in a way. We really want to have an enemy. So, Robert Lifton, go to there. I sent out the announcement about this talk yesterday, and I got a great email back. Robert, thank you so much for taking up this difficult, troubling, and important topic for those seeking a spiritual group. I am active in a group that does both research and counseling on high-demand, high-control cultic groups. We've found that it's very difficult to merely list dangerous cults. There are too many variables. Groups and leaders change and evolve over time in different places and settings. These groups have different consequences for various individuals who in turn have various issues, etc. Cult is a pejorative description and often is used as an attack. One man's religion is another man's cult. Instead, we have found it more productive to look at the group dynamics and process in every group. There is a specific cultic dynamic that Lifton and many later researchers have described that is a trademark of a harmful cultic environment. High control, high demand, usually led by a strongly narcissistic leader or leaders. However, all social groups use 6 basic psychosocial influence processes. See Robert Cialdini, social influence. But this social control lies on a continuum from low control, low demand to, on one end, to, like the Quakers or PIMC, to high control, high demand, like the People's Temple or the Hare Krishnas or the... And then he goes on to speak about his work. So, Swami Ashishananda at the Advaita Vedanta temple here in Portland, when I told him about my cultic experience, he said something very beautiful, and I was so ashamed and riven. I was really pretty crazy about it all. He said, "Don't worry. It's the purity in the heart of the seeker that determines ultimately what happens," which is very helpful. So I think let me see, there's one more piece, Robert Lifton. A little anxious. What is a destructive group? A destructive group is a highly manipulative group or organization which exploits its members and can cause emotional, financial, and physical harm. It dictates in an absolute manner the behavior, thoughts, and emotions of its followers. Coercion and manipulation techniques are used to transform the new recruit into a loyal, obedient, and subservient member. Destructive groups claim a special status for themselves or their leader that usually sets them in opposition to mainline society and or the family. They conceal their real nature and goals from prospective members by adopting deceptive behavior in order to attract new recruits. About 6 months before the Rajneeshis set up shop in Antelope, the FBI came and interviewed my wife and I because we'd been in Pune, not as part of that group, but the Lewis and Clark overseas program that we took was centered there in Pune. And we talked about how the Rajneeshis, how his teaching was so aggressively anti-Indian, and how the Rajneesh followers dressed in halter tops and they were overtly sexual, and they wore the sacred color. To wear that color in India, you only get to wear that color when you've abandoned the world. When you're going, if you wear that color and carry a little brass pot, men, women, it's too dangerous. You never have to work again. People will feed you and take care of you because you've renounced the world in order to seek God. Well, Rajneesh's teachings were very aggressively anti-Indian. And we saw that when we were there. It was very clear. And it was cast as, it's questioning tradition. But there was a not so skillful edge to it. And so the FBI interviewed us, and the FBI was in the group from the beginning. That's how they managed to figure out what was happening and catch him as he was leaving the country with the millions of dollars and so on. There are no villains in this either. In my take, whatever happened, I don't know how it happened, but Rajneesh himself became inflated by the demands of the group. Maybe he had who knows what. But I want to speak more about Sujata. Sujata was a tragic figure who encountered the Dharma. It changed his life. He came back, and his narcissistic personality warped how he presented it. But a tremendous amount of good came through him. I started teaching at that center. And the fact that I started teaching here in Portland after I left was a result that he had propelled me, he'd given me the opportunity to share the Dharma with people and to begin developing the skills. So, there are no villains, but there are those who find themselves and maybe struggle to get to positions of great power and then do great harm. and need to be stopped to the best of our ability. So, and this is not a new phenomenon, nor is it going away. Thought control groups are everywhere. One of the reasons that I wanted to speak of this was so that people can maybe refer to this talk, presuming it's working, when I can say, well, people say, well, is this a cult? Is this? And I can say, well, take a look. Look at the criteria of what a mind control group is like, and then decide for yourself. And similarly, parents, it's not so uncommon that someone starts coming here and a spouse or parents are freaked out because they're going to a dangerous Buddhist group. So, I'm going to read a lot. I'll send you the link today for this website that was very helpful with this. This is distilled down from that. So, the 8 points. Robert Lifton. He's one of my great heroes of this lifetime. Robert Lifton was the first person to study the people who survived the Hiroshima bombings. He was the person who studied the German doctors who did the experimentation on live human beings in World War II. He went to the edges of where human beings became really, really dangerously damaged. He was on Patty Hearst's defense team when she was in the Symbionese Liberation Army, and his point was, this is not just ordinary crime. This is people who have fallen into an isolated position with ideas, and they've been shrunken down. So, first criterion, milieu or environmental control. There is control over the members' flow of information and social interaction. There often is a no gossip rule that keeps people from expressing their doubts or misgivings about what's going on. Members are taught to report those that break the rule, a practice that increases dependency on the leadership. We weren't allowed to criticize, and we didn't gossip about him. All we did was praise him. Information is deliberately held back from members, and many times it's twisted and distorted, and even presented with lies. Members are told not to trust any other material that's critical of the group. Members are not to get close to those who are outside the group or associate with former members. They're not to observe holidays they consider, in this case, pagan or birthdays sometimes. And we were strongly encouraged to not stay in touch with our parents. You know, they don't have the Dharma. So they're really not quite human. They're not, unless you could convert them or get some money from them. I asked my parents for money and they said no. I thought, well, gee, that's really too bad because they're not going to get to help this crucially important teaching get to more people. And that was true. However, the package was higher education is frowned upon, as is getting involved in the community around you. We're very isolated, strongly boundaried around the community. You can only talk about your philosophy. There's always a denigrating of other teachers or teachings. Or sometimes people are told, even within a tradition, you mustn't practice with anyone else other than the people in our group, because somehow or another it will damage your practice. So it creates an insularity. Independent self-expression is thwarted. He played the guitar a little bit. no one else was supposed to do anything like that. Or I was writing a lot of poetry at that time. I was supposed to stop writing poetry because it wasn't the Dharma. If the group or leader is exposed by the media for financial improprieties, immorality, fraud, abuse, violation of civil law, lying, etc., the members attribute this news to Satan attacking, or that's you falling from grace, or I had a friend who was a nurse who worked in drug and alcohol treatment, who went to Seattle late in the life of Chogyam Trungpa. And he always sat with a glass of something. It was always strong distilled spirits. And he was an hour or two late because he was always drunk. And he was dying of cirrhosis of the liver. And there was an excuse made, which is that he was offering crazy wisdom teachings. The Dalai Lama said at a conference that I attended with teachers about this kind of thing, there's no such thing as crazy wisdom teachings. Now this, I may get in big trouble for this, but at any rate, the point I wanted to make was, she pointed out, she got herself in to be one of his attendants. And she pointed out, this man is sick, he needs our help. And she was summarily kicked out. Because everyone in the group believed that this is the guru, and he can't do anything wrong because he's the guru. And so therefore, no one helped him. I have asked the members of our Dharma Leader Training Group to intervene should I ever go crazy. Or when it's time for me to stop teaching, to tell me it's time to stop. Because I have great respect for the human shadow, and we can become inflated, we can, as I was observing with Ruth Denison, we can descend into dementia. For some years, it's been very difficult to get her to stop talking at all. And she needed help. At teachers' conferences, I traveled with her, and I sometimes had to say, you have to stop. So, I hope you can hear, I'm not making anybody wrong and bad in this. It's that we're all vulnerable. Mystical manipulation, the second factor. Oh my God, look at the time. Members have a childlike trust. Sujata would do things that were really nasty and call it pointing out their ego and helping them. The demand for purity, critical shaming, Sujata was incredibly skillful at provoking guilt and shame, and the demand for purity. Your mind is wandering, stop it. Practice harder. Darn, wish I had more time. If you disobey, going back to mystical manipulation, this is a pretty common one, if you give money, you'll get more. And so then if someone doesn't give money and they don't do well, then it's because you're not giving money. There's constant striving, this is demand for purity, constant striving, failing, and result in shame, guilt, and fear of punishment. It's emotional and spiritual bondage. Every thought is to be brought into captivity, and the mind is to be kept pure. Now that warps a meditation practice rather heavily, because contrary to I aspire to love and accept myself exactly as I am, including the wandering mind, including sexual fantasy, including anger, and that's the way the Dharma, as I understand it, the Dharma actually leads, which is inclusion within manipulative groups. It's not. Confession. Past and present behavior, undesirable feelings are to be confessed. However, the information can and will be used against you. So you confess, and somebody finally listens, and you lay out all your failings and so on, and then they get pointed out, this is because you're like that, this is because you're like that. At just the right moment to subjugate you and to make you feel crappy. Sacred science. The world really needs the Dharma in order to be set free. And the Buddha Dharma is the only teaching that's correct. Right? All other traditions, even though you may pay lip service to it, they don't really lead to freedom. Not only that, our group is the one that has the secret teaching. If someone, and there's names for I can't remember what it was, but one usually has names for people who are non-believers, and you can quickly categorize people. They're fallen, or they're from Satan, or they don't have the Dharma. Right? Loading the language. There's group speak. Others are given derogatory titles. Doctrine over person. Members rewrite their own history or ignore it. They're valued only as they conform to the group. This is what the teachings say. If you're not meditating 2 hours a day, you might as well not bother. It could be some great, dangerous, great sound bites taken out of this and put together as... If a member has an experience or feeling that contradicts what the group teaches, you're out. You can be kicked out. When a member finds out the minister or founder is doing something opposite what he teaches, has committed adultery with someone in the congregation, sexually abused the member's child, told lies, or gotten drunk, they will block out all negative thoughts and questions and use the excuse, oh well, you can't be perfect. Or sometimes this is done, which is the teacher is so close to God, or the teacher is enlightened, so therefore what he, usually, but it could be she, sometimes it is, what she does doesn't count the same way as it would if I did it. Because they're beyond ordinary reality, ordinary morality. The dispensation of existence. When Sujata told me, if you're in love with her, you're falling back into the world. Not that we weren't pretty worldly. But you need to decide today and leave. All my friends were there. And I knew that if I left, I would never speak with them again. And in fact, they all went silent. So I was in the house with my friends, and they were all told, don't talk to him. Banishment really hurts. If you leave, you join nothingness. If I left, I really believed I would lose the Dharma. To think any way is to experience intensely uncomfortable feelings of confusion, fear, guilt, and alienation. So you literally can't think other thoughts. That was one of the really powerful aspects of deprogramming, my own and others, which is that you get a person to a point, and then you ask them, well, do you remember this that was happening in the group? And it's like, you almost can't think that, and then there's this, oh yeah, right. We hired a deprogrammer to help my brother-in-law get out of the Hare Krishnas, and he flew in to get some surgery done, and the guy was waiting at the airport in San Francisco to come if my brother-in-law agreed to talk with him. And he spoke about the Hare Krishnas, that after Prabhupada died, there was prostitution happening with the girls in Virginia, and they had a big gun supply in San Francisco. And this people they'd heard of this in the group, but they couldn't think it. So all the quote deprogrammer did was said, "What about that? How do you make sense of this? That this was happening?" And then the mind opened up to be able to think that, and then there was a little freedom, and then and it gets to be kind of like a I don't know, a cascading effect, and suddenly one feels so free. And then it's scary because am I going to fall into? Am I going to lose the way? Because one also gets used to having the answer, and then when the answers fall away. So I'll send out this link, and I've seen lots of heads nodding. And how many of you would say you've had an experience of this kind in a psycho-spiritual organization? So a fair number. A question? Uh-huh.
Kids, like teenagers, who then were just in a regular family, all of a sudden they became kind of born again.
Yeah.
And eventually enough parents and people got those people to stop coming into high school, but it's hard to do. So I would thank one of the parents, but I didn't have the experience of it.
Right. Well, there are powerful, there are aspects of this here at PIMC. Right? And when you go on retreat, there's milieu control, but one of the things that's very important is one subjects oneself to it intentionally. One is encouraged to think, to be able to think, and then one leaves. And in lots of organizations, if you didn't become or don't become residential, you get most of the good stuff. Like many, many people benefited hugely from Rajneesh's teachings. And but it was when they got in close that it got really difficult and destructive. And yes, recruiting for lots of different things is done very similarly. Love bombing, and one might even say that the military does something very similar to this. We train young people to overcome the resistance to killing. Though I had a very wonderful, powerful experience at Brighton Bush where I said something like that, and the young man who had served in Iraq and Afghanistan basically challenged me. And we had a wonderful encounter, which was at the end we were doing a bowing practice and we hugged each other, and he said, "The world needs men like you and men like me. We need men like me sometimes when there is really something to defend us against. And we need men like you to remind us that we're human and that love is the way when we come home." So we do need, in honor, I don't know if there are veterans here, but we do need those people who are willing to stand up against some of the very horrid circumstances in the world. And their sacrifice is huge. Not to build an economy on it and become the world's empire is another issue. But so I honor those who do follow the path of the true warrior to be protective. And also learn about loving. We humans are a big experiment. Right? There are political experiments, communism, fascism, democracy, and they're all really messy. And some of them are, I think, worse than others. But we're trying an experiment. How do we live with each other? How do we rein in the forces of violence and acting out that are there, and how do we organize ourselves. And so there's any number of ways we do it, and hopefully this list might help you to think about it and to recognize if you're in circumstances, or if friends ever are in circumstances where they're really losing control of themselves to someone who's lost his or her way in sociopathy or narcissism. Are there little creatures at the door? So thank you. And my apologies if I've hurt feelings that didn't need to be hurt, or this was a challenging one to get my head around. And so thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. So please stand and make a big circle, yeah. Excuse me, Kate. Excuse me, Karen. Any of you posing as grown-ups who would like to join us are welcome. The closer you get, the more likely it is that you will get to blow out the candle. Uh-oh. There's a lot of high stacks of pillows here. Oh, over here? Okay. All right. Can I sit here? I think it's dangerous to sit on a high stack because I could fall in the flames. Not too many, okay? I don't want you to fall over. All right, I'm coming. I'm coming. All right. Okay. Hi. So, please find a hand or hands to hold. May I hold your hand, sweetie? You have a little dog paws on there. That's cute. Is that because you're a dog? No. So, we're so vulnerable and so precious. Each of us is one of a kind, ever. So why not give the hand on your right a little squeeze and think a kind thought, like, what would be the kindest thought you could think for the person beside you? And then the person on the other side, giving that hand a little squeeze. A nice blessing or prayer in whatever is your most fluent spiritual vocabulary. They're all just words. It's the intention of loving. And now we can imagine, perhaps it is all one great unified field, and what we think is of great importance, and we can send loving thoughts out, loving energies to the people who live around the center. To everyone who's ever come in here in the 70 years of its existence. To everybody, to all of us here on the earth today. To our parents, friends, family. we're all participating in this experiment of life on a little dust speck of a planet somewhere. So, do we have someone who will sing, lead us in song? The words are, may all beings be happy, and sadhu. Okay. Can you go over there? Okay. I think that's working.
Something's wrong.
So when you're ready, girls.
May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu. Sadhu. Sadhu.
Thank you.
Still working.
So now we have the grand finale, where we hold a wish in our hearts, and, I turned it off. And I'm going to count to 3, and then after that, we get to blow out the candle of wish. But can Puppy blow? I think Puppy can blow. But please don't dive into the candle. That's what I'm always a little afraid of. I would hate it if you caught fire. 1, 2, stop. A moment of patience. This is what impatience feels like. 1, 2, 3. Yes! Thank you all. Please come and have some potluck. That was a telling look just there. Thank you for being here, and may you have a wonderful day.